بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت عليم الحكيم. اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. This is our fifth class, right? Fifth class in Zaad Al-Mustaq'ni. We started off covering what is tahara, the three different types of water. We spoke about ma'ut tahur, purifying water, what it is not. We also spoke about the different categories of that which is makruh, hated, and that which is, when we say hated, in other words, some of them say offensive. If we translate it into English, we would say offensive. So we have some that are offensive, and we have others that are recommended or mubah, if you will, permissible. Quick rehash. Who can remember anything that we covered last week? I know you know. Huh? Anything that comes to your mind, anything. I think when we finish this chapter, we're gonna have a test when we finish this chapter. So, huh? As long as the water is not what? As long as the water changed, you can use it.
Like one example you gave with salt, like the seawater, its nature is it's naturally seawater, but if you put salt in the water,
Ahsan. So then, seawater or the sea, can we make wudu with that water? We can. Like some of the companions, they came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they said, "Afanatawadda'u bihada?" Or kama qala. They said, "Do we make wudu with this?" Talking about the water in the sea. Why would they ask that question? Why would the companions ask if they can make wudu from the water in the sea? Huh? Because it was salty? Not because it was salty. Because not because it had animals in it. Huh? Because it wasn't pure? Why would they say it's not pure? So right now, that term we use pure, we're not on pure, we're on purifying. There's a difference between something that's pure and something that purifies something else. Right? Why did the Sahaba, why did they ask about making wudu with the water in the sea? Huh? We spoke about this morning for Fajr. Huh? Ahsant. Because they may have in the water in the sea, there may be dead animals. Right? Or they also mentioned what? Hayab. You know what hayab is, right? What's hayab? The stuff that women use when they have their menses every month. It's called hayab. And this would be thrown into the sea and the things like that. Right? This was during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is some of the reasons that the ulama al-Islam said that they asked the question, can we make wudu from this water? Right. An-Nabi ﷺ, he said, huwa tuhurun wal hilla maytatuh. Or kama qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said the water is purifying and the dead animals in that water are halal. Are halal for you to eat. Talking about sea, animals of the sea, not an animal of the land that goes into the sea that dies. La. They're not talking about that. Is that clear? Right. We have a lot to cover today. I just wanted to give one point that we discussed last week. All right. Behind us here, I know it's in all Arabic, but we're going to translate it, inshallah, and make sure that it's clear for everyone to understand. Inshallah ta'ala. Right. So then, the first thing, alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The first thing we're going to talk about here, today's class, it has to do with, we already covered the two types of water before, right? We covered tuhur, hukman, and haqiqatan, right? What's the difference between hukman and haqiqatan? Does anyone know? Right, haqiqatan is the water that remains in its natural state. Hukman, it means that it's the water that it changed somewhat, but it still takes the ruling as if it's in its natural state. All right? So today's class, we're going to talk about quantity. Quantity. What is considered a lot of water and what is not considered a lot of water. And the reason why we're going to discuss that, because this is a big issue. Last week people were asking about making wudu on lakes and so on and so forth. So today's class, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to discuss that. But before we get into that, there are some qualifying things that we have to discuss first. All right? The first thing is, we're going to look at some dalil to establish what we're going to be talking about. So, Nabi alayhi salatu salam, what did he say? It says right here, follow the highlighter if you can, and then we'll translate it, inshallah. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا بلغ الماء قلتين لم ينجسه شيء وفي رواية لم يحمل الخبث أخرجه أحمد وهو الصحيح. The first hadith here, النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, if water reaches بلغ قلتين, قلتين, this word here, قلتين, this here is a unit of measurement. Qullatain is a unit of what? A unit of measurement. This unit of measurement here is not used today. However, if you're going to translate it into what we are accustomed to here, this would be the equivalent of 42.8 gallons. I'm just going to write that here. 42.8 gallons. Or roughly 162 liters. Roughly. This is important because what happens after this whole chapter here is dealing with qullatain. We're going to talk about this today. All right? Why is it important? So on and so forth. But, so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if water reaches qullatain, if it reaches what? If it reaches 42.8 gallons or roughly 162 liters, lam yunajjisahu shay'un, it doesn't become najis. Okay? It doesn't become najis. Or, in another narration here, I'm going to use a pointer. It says, lam yahmil al-khabith. It doesn't carry in it any impurities. This is generally. Are we clear on this part so far? Yes or no? Yes. All right. This hadith here is sahih. The hadith is sahih. It's authentic. This hadith is authentic. It was reported by Imam Ahmed and others. Okay? Are we clear? By Mumtaz. So, if you want to write this down, you will say, if the water reaches 42.8 gallons, it's called qullatain. If the water reaches qullatain, 42.8 gallons or 162 liters roughly, lam yunajjishu shay'an. Lam yunajjishu shay'an. Or shay'un. Lam yunajjishu shay'un. Wa fi riwayah, and in another report, this means if the water reaches qullatain, which is this measurement, this amount here, it does not carry any impurities or filth. Right? And then in another report, it doesn't carry any actual impurities. Filth, najis. And this hadith was reported by Imam Ahmed. Are we clear on that first hadith? All right, good. The second one, وَقَالَ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, he says, الْمَاءُ لَا يُنَجِّسُهُ شَيْءٌ. He said, the water, it does not contain in it any impurities. إِلَّا, and they're talking about a lot of water here, إِلَّا مَا غَلَبَ عَلَى رِيحِهِ, except by which is overcome by the smell or the taste or the loan or the color. The smell, taste of color. The smell, taste, and color. This hadith right here. Now, if you notice, we have green around this pot, this side, and there's red around this side here. You see that? All right, so does everyone understand this so far? Or should I do it again? If you want me to do it again, say do it again. Do it again. Do it again. All right, no problem. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, Al-ma'u la yunajjisuhu shay'un. He said, water, there's nothing that, nothing can turn it into najis. Nothing can make the water najis. Except, this here means except for that which is overcome by the smell, the taste, and the color. Is that clear? Any questions so far? So right now we got two hadith, right? We got one here and then one here. Question, go ahead.
If there's a difference of opinion in the volume of water?
Yes, but I didn't get there yet.
Okay.
So listen, this is what we're going to do about the questions okay, when I say questions, right? If you have a question that's not dealing with what I actually mentioned here, just hold it to the side and we'll get to it at the end. All right? Because that's what the whole class is about, the volume of water. So we're going to get into all of that, inshallah. Okay? So the first two here, are these two hadith clear? Yes or no? Any questions about this right here, these two hadith here? Any questions? All right, we'll do it one more time. All right? The first hadith here, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And for those that don't read Arabic, don't just listen to what I'm saying and write down the meaning of the hadith. If the water reaches 2 qullatain, if it reaches 42.8 gallons or roughly 162 liters, if the water reaches that much, لم ينجسه شيء, it doesn't become filthy. And then another report, لم يحمل الخبث, it doesn't contain in it any impurities. This hadith was reported by Imam Ahmed and it is authentic. All right. Is that clear? Right. The next hadith. وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم الماء لا ينجسه شيء. النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said nothing takes away the purification of water except for that which causes it to smell, the taste, or the color. Is that clear? All right, this hadith was reported by Ibn Majah. If you notice this hadith right here, we have a green portion here, and then the next portion is what? Red, right? Right or wrong? Do y'all see the two different colors? All right. The reason why this is green is because this part of the hadith is authentic. This part of the hadith is authentic. Whereas the part that's red here is considered da'if, is weak. Is that clear? There are a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, a piece of it is authentic, and another piece of it may be da'if, weak. Is that clear? Huh? Any questions about that? طيب. ممتاز. All right, so وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم الماء لا ينجسه شيء. That water is not or does not lose its purification except by what is overcome by the smell, the taste, and the color. So the question is, why are we mentioning this part of the hadith if it's weak? Is that a good question? Huh? Yes, it's a good question, right? But the answer to that is, just because there are some ahadith that may be weak. However, the scholars of Islam may agree that the meaning of it is correct. And this right here is one of those cases where they say, except for that which is overcome by the smell, the taste, and the color. This here is weak. It's not authentic. However, the scholars of Islam have agreed on an ijma'. There's a scholarly consensus that this particular meaning of this hadith is correct. Is that clear? Or no? Any questions thus far? You sure? All right, so somebody tell me what I just said. Explain it to me.
First hadith you said that.
Louder, louder, louder.
You said the first one you said if it reaches 42 point, I don't know what the other one, 48 point something.
42.8.
42.8 gallons that nothing can that nothing can make it incur.
Okay.
Then the second one you said that that the water nothing can make the water incur except for the smell, the taste, and
The smell, the taste, and the color.
but
Good.
you said the second part of it is weak.
Right.
But the meaning of it is agreed upon.
Okay. Does anyone understand the statement ijma', scholarly consensus? Is that clear? What does that mean? La, la,
Majority of it.
la. There's a difference between jamhur and a consensus.
Everybody.
Jamhur, it means the majority, which is not a ruling in Islam. It's just a majority position on an issue. It means that the majority of the scholars say this, and then there are a minority that says something different. This is not a ruling that everyone must follow. However, if we have an issue that it's a consensus, we have two types in general of consensus. You have ijma qat'i and ijma dhanni. And what qat'i means that there is no possible way to go against this type of ijma, this type of scholarly consensus. So what that means is the scholarly consensus generally, where there's no difference of opinion, is that which the Sahaba have agreed upon. That which who? The Sahaba have agreed upon. This is a hujjah in Islam. This is a proof in Islam. Or that which the generations of the scholars in a particular time period, all of them agreed on that issue. Is that clear? Huh? You look confused. You confused? Yeah. All right. No problem. Listen, guys, if it's confusing, just say, do it again. It's okay. All right? All right. So the scholarly consensus, it generally deals with any scholar in a particular time period, all of them agreeing on one particular ruling. The strongest of ijma'ats are that which occurred during the time of the companions. There's no difference of opinion about that. If all of the companions agreed on something, it becomes a ruling in Islam. Likewise, the generation that came after them, if all of the scholars during that time period agreed on a particular ruling. Is that clear? Right. So let's look at here. أخرجه ابن ماجه وهو ضعيف, and it is weak, and the scholars of Islam hold it to be an ijma'. So it says here, كل ماء تغير بمخالطة النجاسة فهو نجس. And here, the ulama of Islam, they say, any water that changes, when they say change, this word here means change. Any water that changes by way of the taste, the color, and the smell, any water that changes by way of taste, color, and smell by some form of impurity falling into it, فَهُوَ نَجِسٌ. It is najis. It is filthy. Is that clear? Or no? Right. Who said that? Because we have here this hadith here that they say this is weak, but the scholars of Islam say that this is true based on the consensus of the ijma'. Who said it was an ijma'? That should be a good question, right? Who said that? Right? So we have a list of scholars here from the past that held it to be ijma'. For those of you that study Islam, I mentioned some of the books where you could find them if you wanted to research them on your own. Number one, ذكره Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam al-Shafi'i, he died in the year 204 Hijri. He mentions it in his book called Ikhtilaf al-Hadith. A book called Ikhtilaf al-Hadith. The differences of hadith. This is a book by Imam al-Shafi'i. He died in the year 204. He also said that this was an ijma'. Likewise, Haka Ijma' Ibn Mundhir. Ibn Mundhir, he also mentioned in his book called Al-Awsat. And he died in the year 318 Hijri. He died in the year 318 Hijri. Now notice, and the reason why I put it this way, so you can understand the succession. This year is 203. This is 318. This is 458. This is 560. They're all getting their information on the scholars that came before them. Notice how it's a trend, right? So after Ibn Mundhir, who died in the year 318 Hijri, we also have Imam al-Bayhaqi. Imam al-Bayhaqi, he also mentions it in his book called As-Sunan al-Kubra. As-Sunan al-Kubra. And in this book, he died in the year 458 Hijri. And lastly, we have here Ibn Hubayra. Ibn Hubayra. He mentions it in his book called Al-Ifsah. And he died in the year 560 Hijri. This is just some history. This is just so you can have in your mind what's going on. All right? Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned with regards to the issue of ijma', he said, إِذَا ثَبَتَ إِجْمَعُ الْأُمَّةِ, if we can affirm that there is a consensus in the ummah, على حكم من الأحكام لم يكن لأحد أن يخرج عن إجماعهم. He said that if you can confirm that there is a consensus on any particular issue, then it is not permissible for anyone to go outside of that consensus. And then you can find this in his Majmu' Fatawa. This is in the Majmu' Fatawa of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Is this too much or it's too much?
No, I have a just question on the changing of the water. I know we're dealing with the quantity of water.
Let me get that. Let me finish this and we'll get right back to that, okay? Inshallah. Right. What's the dalil al-ijma'? So the dalil in the Quran, I'll read it in English. The dalil here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is what happened. The story of ijma', there was a man who came to Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam al-Shafi'i was the first person to write a book in Usul al-Fiqh. Imam al-Shafi'i, a man approached him and said, what's the dalil, or what's the strongest mode of evidence in the religion? So Imam al-Shafi'i, he replied by saying, it is the Quran. And then after it, the man said, well, then what? Then he said, it is the Sunnah. Then after that, Imam al-Shafi'i, the man asked him, then after that, he said, al-ijma', scholarly consensus. So the man said to him, well, what's your dalil for that? So Imam al-Shafi'i didn't answer him. And he was upset. So Imam al-Shafi'i left. Imam al-Shafi'i was upset. He couldn't answer him when the man asked him that question. So he went away. He went back to his house and he said he read the Quran every day, 3 days straight, over and over and over, trying to find something to support ijma'. And then he came across this ayah in Surah An-Nisa, verse 115, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, is it 115? Yes. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ السَّبِيلَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and whoever constantly opposes the messenger, even after the guidance has become evident to him, and closely follows the way other than the believers. The shahid here, or the point that you can look at, is the people, they follow the way of the believers. We turn him away from whatever patron he turns away to, and we roast him in hell. And what this is talking about is a person, if they follow another path other than the way of the believers. What's understood by here is that they follow the path of the believers. So Imam al-Shafi'i, he mentioned that if all of the believers believed in one way, then it's not permissible for someone to go against them. Who are they talking about, the believers here? The people of knowledge. If the Sahaba, for example, chose a particular course, a particular way of action, and they all agreed on it, it is not for anyone to oppose them. Is that clear? That was the dalil. That's one of the adillah. There are many, but this is one of them that's used for al-ijma'. Now, back, 115. Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa, verse 115. Any other questions about, you asked me a question about the changing of the water, right?
Yes. Last week we talked about the smell, the taste, and the color.
Mumtaz.
So what's the difference?
Ahsant. The difference here is if the smell, the taste, and the color changes by some impurity falling into it. If the smell, color, and taste change by way of something impure falling into it. Or if the color, taste, or smell change by a lot of something else falling into it, which is tahir, but we didn't get to that yet. Okay? So this issue here about smell, taste, and color, we're going to keep revisiting that until we finish water altogether. All right? So are we clear on everything we covered on this board? Yes or no? Huh? You came late, Sheikh. We can't do the whole thing over. All right? All right. So we're going to move on to the next board here. You want to help me slide this? Can you get it? All right, Mumtaz. I need a couple of those markers, too.
This comes or?
No, this one. This is number 2, right? Yeah, this is number 2. All right, bismillah. All right, inshallah. Right. So, we mentioned before that we're going to be covering 2 types of water here. That which is considered a large quantity and that which is considered a small quantity. Right? So, for the duration of this class, we're going to refer to water that is a large quantity as al-kathir. So, when we say water that is kathir, this means it's 42.8 gallons or more. 162 liters or more. Large means kathir. Okay? Is that clear? طيب. Al-Qalil here is small, less than roughly 42.8 gallons or 162 liters. Now, if any of you read this in English, you might find the numbers differ. Some people may say 50 gallons, some say a little more, some say a little less. It varies, depending on which measurement you use to determine what qullatain is equivalent to. So, are we clear on these 2 breakdowns here? We have water that is a lot, and we have water that is a small amount. All right? Any questions about that so far? No?
Is that 42 gallons?
Yes, 42.8 gallons. You have to excuse my handwriting here. It's not the best. I never claimed that. I just made it worse. Levets. All right. Can we move on? Right. All right, so first we're going to start with ma'ul kathir, which is a lot of water. The question, إِذَا وَقَعَتْ النَّجَاسَةِ. So now we have a lot of water. A lot of water is considered what? Water that is 42.8 gallons or greater or more than. Okay? 42.8 gallons or 162 liters or more than that. Okay? If some form of najasa, some impurity, fell into that water, now we have 2 scenarios. We have 2 scenarios. When that piece of, right now, let's get back into the scenario, we're out camping. We're camping, there's a big, we have a big, huge, they call it al-makhzan, like a big well, if you will, of water, right? A lot of it. So, we brought this out with us while we're out camping, and we're like, oh man, a dog came past and urinated in the water. Astaghfirullah. What do we do? Huh? A dog came past and urinated in the water, right? So, now we're looking at this water. Can we use this water, yes or no? The first thing should come to a person's mind is it falls into 2 categories. Either it's mutaghayyir, either it changed. When we say the water changed, what are we talking about? The taste, the color, and the smell. So we got somebody here that said, okay, let's look at it. The taste, I don't know if you're going to taste it. You're going to smell it, and you're going to, see if the color changed, and possibly you might taste a low olive, right? Or is it ghayru mutaghayyir? Yani it didn't change at all. You look at all this water is clear, and you notice that the urine from the dog didn't affect anything. All right? So, if we say that it changed, if that water is changed by something that's impure, like the urine from a dog, for example. If it changed by something that's impure, like the urine from a dog, then this water is najis. This water is what? Najis. Even though it's a large amount. Is that clear? The dalil for this is al-ijma'. The dalil for this is al-ijma', which is a scholarly consensus on this particular issue. Is that clear? Can we move to the next one? طيب. The next one. If it's غير متغير, يعني it didn't change at all. This large quantity of water, it did not change at all after the dog urinated in the water. This water now remains tahur. It remains a purifying body wherein we can make wudu from it or a ghusl from it. Is that clear? Any questions about that?
You said if you didn't change the color, right?
Huh?
You said if you didn't change the color.
If it didn't change. So here we have change. This right here, no, right here we can say change. And this right here, it didn't change. This here is change. And this here is no change. That might not be in your book. Yeah, it's not going to be in there.
I was just thinking about in the same sense as well, things covered in like the ocean. Now, if oil tanker spurs oil in that part of the water, you know, it's big, it's going to be
Mumtaz. So he asked a question, even though it doesn't have anything to do with this. But the reason why I'm going to entertain it right now is because it has something to do with something we covered before. He said if an oil tanker spills oil in the water, all right, a large amount of water, but it spilled oil into the water. Based on what we covered before, we said something in the last week's class, if something that is pure mixes with water but is ghayru mumazij, in other words, it's non-soluble, is that oil, does oil mix with water or does it not mix? It doesn't mix. So then can you make wudu with it, yes or no? Yes. Ahsant. Shift key. See that? This is why everything is principle based. If you understand how it's used, you can derive it by yourself. So, okay, well, if it's this, this, and this, then it equals this. That's why we do charts. You can say, all right, a lot of water, something impure got into the water. Okay, is it changing or doesn't it change? It doesn't change. Then the ruling is this. Then it's pure. It's a purifying factor still. Is that clear? Fine. So are we clear on these two right here? This side, are we clear? All right, we're going to move over here. Small amount of water. Al-qalil. A small amount of water. Less than 42.8 gallons or 162 liters. Less than that. So now we're talking about a small amount of water considerably. And this is all relative. So that's a small amount of water, like what? A bucket. You got a bucket of water, okay? Waqa'at al-najasa. Some impurities fell into this bucket of water. It's not a small amount, or rather it's a small amount. It's not a large amount. It's a small amount of water, right? Some water, some najasa, some impurities fell into the small amount of water. Now, in our mind, we break that down to two categories. Did it change or didn't it change? We say that this small amount of water, the dog urine fell into it and it caused the water to change. So then the ruling is what? Najis. It's impure, and the dalil for it is ijma'. It's a scholarly consensus that this water is najis, impure. If it's impure, now think about this. If it's impure for a large amount, if some najasa or impurities come into it and causes it to change, then from baba ola, as they say, a small amount is definitely going to be najis. Is that clear? Right. The next one. غير متغير. So now we have a small amount of water and some impurity fell into it. A couple drops of urine from a dog. Not a whole urine, just a couple specks. Just get out of here, and the dog ran away. He started to urinate and he ran away. But some specks got into the bucket of water. The ruling on this is that it's najis. It is also najis. And this is in the madhab of Imam Ahmed that it is najis. But there is a difference of opinion from Imam Malik and other than them. So some of you may actually study the fiqh of Imam Malik and say, hey, Imam Malik doesn't say that. Yes, there is a difference of opinion with that, but we're not studying that, so we're just going to stick to this. All right? Like, here's a principle, it's a qa'idah here that we should use when looking at water. There's a qa'idah. The principle is, al-qalilu yanjisu bil-wuqu' al-janasa, al-najasa. Al-qalilu yanjisu bil-wuqu' al-najasa. A small amount of water becomes impure just by the mere speck of something that is impure. A small amount of water becomes tainted with impurities even if a small amount touches it. Is that clear? The next principle here, al-kathiru, a large amount of water, لا ينجس بالوقوع النجاسة بل ينجس بالتغير. A small amount or a large amount of water does not become impure just by the mere fact of something impure falling into it. Rather, it only becomes impure if it changes by way of that impurity. Does that make sense? An example of both of these would be the small amount that becomes impure. We have a small bucket of water and a dog urinated. Small specks of urine got into it that we can't even see it. Just the mere fact that something impure fell into that water, it becomes what? Impure. The next one, the ma'ul kathir, if it's a lot of water and the same specks of impurity came into the large amount of water, but it didn't change anything, then it remains a purifier. Is that clear? I hope I didn't confuse anybody. Is anyone confused? Huh? If you're confused, say you're confused, but do it again. It's all right. Huh? The last two? All right. So these last two things here, they're considered principles, rules that you go by. So think to yourself, I have a bucket of water. No matter what happens to it, if anything impure goes into that bucket of water, it becomes impure right away. Okay? There's a big makhsan, or big, large body of water. If that impurity falls into it and it causes it to change by way of the color, taste, and smell, then it becomes najis. Those are the two principles. All right? This is clear?
Those make this one with the small, make it najis.
Which one?
Yes.
This
No.
or this?
Yes.
Yeah, this one is ghayra mumtaz. Yeah, okay, mumtaz. So if we have a small amount of water and a dog urinated, some small specks got into the water, but it wasn't enough to change it. It didn't change in the taste, the smell, or the color. Is this water still najis? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, it's still najis. Why? Because it's a small amount. The quantity is small. Okay? Now, so you might say, well, what are we doing? This class here, we're learning how to understand the speech of the earlier scholars of Al-Islam. When they write their books, what are they actually saying? Because if we were just to read straight from the text, everyone might be confused. So we decided to put it on a board like this to break it down clear so that if you're able to go back to the text and read it, it becomes super clear. It becomes super clear to anyone that can go back and read it. Even though you may disagree with some of these rulings, but these are rulings that scholars have taken. Major scholars of Al-Islam. From the earliest centuries to the mid-centuries up until today. These are strong, recognizable positions. What we're trying to do is to show you how they came about with certain rulings and what was their thought process. What was their thought process when they came up with this stuff? What were they thinking? What is it based on? Is that clear? Right. So now we're going to move on to the third chart. Right now we spoke about what? A lot of water and a small amount of water, right? So now we're going to go to the third chart. Now we're going to talk about something called Bowl al-Adami. Bowl al-Adami, this here is talking about a human being's urine. urine from a human being or feces or excrement from a human being, it takes a completely different ruling according to the earlier scholars that followed the fiqh of Imam Ahmed. What I just said right now, is that clear? Yes or no? Huh? It's clear? No, it's not. What's not clear? Listen. Right now, we just spoke about, before this chart here, we spoke about a large amount of water and a small amount of water, right? We said a large amount of water is 42.8 gallons or more. A small amount of water is less than 42.8 gallons. We said what's impure from it, what's pure from it. How do we identify it? Does it change, or it changes or it doesn't change, right? All right. This here, we're still dealing with the large amount of water, but the large amount of water now is measured totally differently. It has nothing to do with the 42.8. In fact, it could be more than 42.8. And this is why I wrote here 150 gallons. Just so that we're clear on this issue. It's a whole lot more than the 42.8. But right now we're talking about urine from a human being or feces from a human being that falls into the water. It's broken down into two categories. Okay? Urine from a human being is broken down into how many categories? Two categories. Somebody might say, well, why is that? Why are they separating between a human being's urine and an animal's urine and any other impurity? Why is there a distinction between different types of impurities when it falls into water? Why are they distinguishing between a human's urine and feces as opposed to an animal's? That's a good question, right? All right, we're going to answer that in a minute, inshallah. But first, it says the urine of a human being is broken down into two categories with regards to it falling into water that's more than kullatain. That's more than a large amount or more, okay? All right, it's broken down into two categories. That which is ma yashukku nazruhu. So if the water falls, if this urine, the human being urinates in water, that is a large amount, larger than what we know it to be, 150 gallons, for example, and the urine is in that water, but it's almost impossible to remove. The urine is almost impossible to remove. Imagine a lake. Somebody urinates in a lake. Can you scoop that out? No. It's almost impossible, right? What about an ocean? Can someone scoop urine out of an ocean? No. What about a sea? What about a river? It's impossible, right? So it says, وَمَا يَشُقُّ نَزْعُهُ or نَزْعُهُ وَهُوَ كَثِيرٌ. Then this water is considered a purifier still. If it's difficult to remove that form of urine out of the water, then it becomes a purifier. Does that make sense? Just understand right now it's just all about understanding the kalam of the ulama. That's it. Right now we're trying to understand the speech of the scholars, why they say it. All right? We're not, let's get there's 1,000 hadiths. Not, right now we're just understanding why they're saying what they're saying. All right? So, ma yashukku naz'uhu. That which is difficult to remove, and it's a lot of water, like over what we mentioned before, then this water is a purifier. This water is what? Purifier. Why is it a purifier? Because it's almost impossible to remove it. And it's a large body of water. All right. لا نعلم فيه خلافا. Ibn Qudama, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in Al-Mustaq'ni, and likewise his nephew Shamsuddin, he mentions in a book called Ash-Sharh al-Kabir, which is a book that has many narrations from the earlier centuries of scholars about Islam. They said, لا نعلم فيه خلاف. They said, we don't know of any difference of opinion on this issue right here, from any of the ulama. We're not just talking about the madhab, we're talking about all of the ulama of Islam. They don't know of any difference of opinion. It's almost as if he's saying there's a consensus on it, without saying it. Now, fadl.
Yeah, so like, they got it. You're talking about river. They got a moving river
Yes.
They got a well that is not moving at all. They dig a well, but the water is not moving. They're set in it.
Okay.
But they got a river moving.
Okay.
So they got, they move.
Listen to the principles. I'm going to let you answer that question based on everything we just covered. See, this is the point of the test. At the end of the chapter, we're going to give a test. The test it's not going to be yes, no answers. You're going to come up with scenarios just like you came up with. Based on everything that you covered, you figure it out yourself. So you asked me about a river, a well. What about the well?
The well is a sitting water.
Okay, and we're talking about urine in it, right? Okay, so let me go over this side here and then hold on and ask that same question when we finish this. All right? And then you're going to find the answer yourself. Okay? Here, it says, وَمَا لَا يَشْ. So are we clear on this side over here? All right. So here, this is considered ma'ul qalil. It's considered a small amount. But this small amount here is still 150 gallons. Remember, I said, as it relates to urine and feces from a human being, the large and small has nothing to do with the 42.8. I just mentioned 150 here for a reason, just to let you know that has nothing to do with the small and large is based off of whether it's difficult to remove it or not. So, if someone were to urinate in a well, okay, as the brother asked, if someone were to urinate in a well, and this water is considered qalil, why is it considered qalil? Because it's easy to remove that urine from it. If someone urinated in a well, it would be easier, possibly easier to remove it, right or wrong. Or feces. If someone dropped some feces in a well, would it be easy to scoop it out? Yes or no? I'm asking you.
Yeah, the feces.
Maybe not the urine, but feces.
Yeah, maybe you can see the feces.
Maybe you can see it. Even if let's say it's in a well and you urinated in it, it might be easy to remove it. You might have to remove a lot of the water, but it's possible to remove it. Right? Maybe. Do you agree?
I agree on that.
Okay, if you agree with that right there, then the water is what? Najis. Then the water is what? Najis. Why is that? Ahsant. But first we got to understand, it's najis, right? Why is it najis? Because it's easy to remove that water, or easy to remove that impurity. That impurity that fell into the well is easy to remove it. So for this reason, it becomes najis. If it was difficult, almost impossible to remove, and it's a large amount of water, then it would be tahur. Why? Because it's almost impossible to remove that impurity. Is that clear? What don't you don't understand the why part? I didn't give you the dalil yet. I'm going to give it to you now. So the brother said, what's the evidence? And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, لا يبولن أحدكم في الماء الدائم الذي لا يجري ثم يغتسل منه. And Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, do not urinate, any of you, in standing water, the type of water that doesn't run up a stream, and then you try to wash yourself and clean yourself from it. And this hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. Easy, right? Mumtaz. Did I answer your question? All right. This is why sometimes I say it's better to ask a question at the end, because why? We're probably going to cover your question throughout the course. Right. So then, al-kathir wa qalil. A large amount of water and a small amount of water. في بول آدمي يترتب على مشقة نزعه. A large amount of water and a small amount of water is depending upon the difficulty of removing a human waste. It depends on the difficulty of removing the human waste. So that which is easy to remove, and there's also a lot of water, then this is considered a small amount, because why? It's easy to remove. Therefore, it is najis. And if it is difficult to remove, then this is considered a large amount with regards to human waste. In this case, it becomes a purifier. Now, I'm not saying that right away you're going to look for water that looks like this to purify yourself from. We're saying that, you're out in the woods and this is your best bet. Is this clear? Are we clear? Yes or no? Huh? Right. Now we're going to move on to the very last issue. It's one more issue we got to cover.
Can we read the hadith one more time?
Yeah, the hadith says, لا يبلن أحدكم في الماء الدائم الذي لا يجري ثم يغتسل منه متفق عليه. النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, do not urinate, any of you, in standing water, the type that doesn't run. So the type that doesn't run, like a river, like you mentioned, the type that doesn't run. Then after that, try to wash yourself from it. Okay, this is a prohibition, right? Now we're going to use the last chart here, and then,
Like on the side, you put the red and green. 1 week.
what, the red and the green for the very first chart?
Red mark. So the red mark on that side, you need that a week.
Which one, brother?
It's red when that says
The red right here where it says Najis? Right here?
Yeah, the red.
Why did I put the red there?
Yeah, because on the other, for the first one, you see the red.
And green. Yeah, listen, it's not color coordinated throughout. It was just color coordinated on that one board. Right here, I just, put red just to spice it up a little bit. All right? There's no particular reason. But I did put Najis. I circled Najis and kept it in red because I wanted it to be clear that it's, red is usually marks danger, right? So I marked it as red just so you can, pay attention to it. It's not good. All right? This is our last issue here for the day, inshallah. This is an issue. We're going to learn something else about Imam Ahmed here. This is an issue that is called from the Mufradat to Imam Ahmed. What does that mean? The Mufradat to Imam Ahmed. This is considered one of the issues that Imam Ahmed is alone by himself on this issue. In other words, no one else supports him on this particular issue. And there are issues like that when you study fiqh. So we're going to discuss this issue here. Now, if it's women listening to this, oh man, I can't, how is that possible? It doesn't make sense. Just pay attention. Bismillah. So the madhab, it says here in the book, Imam al-Hajjawi, let me back this up here. So Imam al-Hajjawi, he says here in the beginning, he says, now what are we talking about? We're still talking about water that is a purifier, right or wrong? We're talking about purifying water, right? So he says, okay. Bismillah. You can't see it?
No, I'm talking of the...
No, I think you can see it here. I think the people online can see it, inshallah. So, Imam al-Hajjawi, he says, وَلَا يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثَ رَجُلًا طَهُورٍ يَسِيرٌ خَلَّتْ بِهِ إِمْرَأَةٌ لِطَهَارَةٍ كَامِلَةٍ عَنْ حَدَثٍ. For those that understand Arabic might say, what in the world? That doesn't even make sense. This narration, it says, وَلَا يَرْفَعُ الْحَدَثَ. And the reason why I put numbers on the top, so we can understand it as we go along. So, it says here, La yarfa'u hadatha. There's a type of water that doesn't remove impurities. It doesn't remove the impurity of a man, with water that is tahur, and it's a small amount, if that water was somehow alone by itself with a woman and no one saw her with that water. Don't laugh. Just pay attention. Pay attention. So let's do it again. This type of water that is a purifier, it does not remove the impurity, the ritual impurity of a man, even though the water is purifying, and it's a small amount. In other words, less than qullatayn, right? خَلَّتْ بِهِ إِمْرَأَةٌ. That a woman is by herself with it. What did she do with it? She purified herself لِطَهَارَةٍ كَامِلَةٍ, with a complete, total wudu from an impurity. Is that clear or no? All right, I know it's not clear. We're going to do it again. There is a woman, right? A woman. Okay, so I'm going to explain this here. There's a bucket of water. A woman takes this bucket of water, she goes in a closet or a room by herself, and she makes wudu from that bucket of water. A man cannot use that bucket of water to make wudu from it. But before we get into that, a person that has been paying attention from the beginning of when we first started this class, they're going to say, what's the purpose of mentioning that when we first started, we said that if anyone uses water by itself and then you can't use it again anyway. Remember that? So then what's the benefit of us mentioning this? Huh? Makes sense, right? So I had to ask one of the Mashaykh this question when I studied this. I asked one of the Mashaykh this question. They said perhaps they mean here that a woman, she had a bucket of water and she had a cup, and she used the cup to dip into it without it actually touching her. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Does that make sense? So she didn't actually touch the water. She just used a cup. She was by herself. She used a cup and made wudu from a cup, pouring it over herself to make wudu from it. At any event, Imam Ahmed says that this is impermissible. A man cannot use this water after her to make wudu. Is that clear?
But she didn't touch it, so why he can't make wudu after?
We're not getting into the why right now. Right now, I already told you from the very beginning that this is from the mufradat. This is from the issues that Imam Ahmed is alone by himself on. Okay? But Imam Ahmed is a muhaddith. He's a scholar of hadith. Why would he mention this? His dalil is this right here. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى أن يتوضأ الرجل من طهور المرأة أخرجه أحمد والترمذي. This hadith is authentic, and the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام naha. What's the word for naha? Forbidden, yes. The Prophet ﷺ, he forbade a man from making wudu from a woman's water that was left behind. And this hadith is authentic. Are we clear on that?
All right, but did you say that if somebody doesn't see the woman do it?
Yes, she has to be by herself. Khalat bihi imra'atun. She has to take that water and go. So, the reason why, so if someone sees her, then you can still use it. Huh? If it's a lot of water, then you can still use it. If it's not for a total purification, it's for partial, then you can still use it. So this is why all of these all of these 8 things here are conditions in order for it to be met. Is that clear? Right. However, there's another hadith here. Hadith an Ibn Abbas, and the Nabiy sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kana yaghtasilu bi fadli Maymuna, akhrajahu Muslim. There's another hadith here an Ibn Abbas, where the Prophet ﷺ, he used to make a ghusl with the remaining water from Maymuna. So now we have a problem, right? Here, we have the Prophet ﷺ saying you can't do it. And then here, you have the Prophet ﷺ doing it himself. So essentially what you have here is the Prophet ﷺ telling you cannot do something. And then here, it's almost like he's doing it himself. That's a problem. We're in a class right now, so we're not saying if you say it's a problem, we're not saying you're speaking against the sunnah. Now I
think because he's seen it.
Not. Some might say that, but let's assume that he didn't. Let's assume that he didn't. What's apparent is that there may be some ta'arud. Ta'arud means you have 2 different ahadith, and it looks like it's possible that it might go against each other. Right or wrong? So what do you do? Huh?
You can do it if it's your family.
La. Imam Ahmed said this is it, clear. This is the hadith. Don't do it. Right? Hadith is authentic.
Can you say the first one again?
Say the hadith again? Yeah, the hadith says, Naha an yatawadda'a ar-rajulu min tuhur al-mar'ati. This is talking about the wudu, the water that she used to make wudu with. Yes.
Could it be second hadith be specific to the Prophet?
No, it's not. But that could be, but no. So the reason for this, when we have zahir al-ta'arud, if we have 2 ahadith that seemingly oppose one another, the ulama al-Islam, the first thing they try to do is a jam', which means they try to combine them. So many of the ulama, when they look at ahadith like this in particular, they say this prohibition here, it doesn't mean that it's haram. Rather, it means that it's not recommended. Huh? Yeah, I did. But now we have a live example of it. You see that? if you have a prohibition, anytime there's a prohibition, anytime the Prophet ﷺ forbade us to do something, and then we find him doing the opposite or anyone else doing the opposite, then this takes this prohibition and moves it from the level of muharram to something that is hated. Is that clear? Huh? You see how that works? Somebody might say, well, how do we know something is hated or not? How do we know that this is makruh? The Prophet ﷺ said it's forbidden. He forbade us from making wudu from the tahur of a woman. If someone translates this, it's going to say it's impermissible. How are you telling us it's permissible? Because we have another hadith that opposes it. So then that prohibition now moves to the level of makruh, something that's hated, not haram. Is that clear? Any questions about this? Any questions about anything that we covered today? Now, it might have been a lot, but inshallah ta'ala it's on the internet, bi'idhnillah, so you can go back after class. Once you go home and think about it and be like, wait a minute, I had a question. Just go back, review it again for the next class.
We write the address to the internet.
Do you write? What is it? Yeah, it's on Facebook. There's a page that me and a brother have.
Just with your name.
No, it's called Al-Thamaraat. Al-Thamaraat. No. I'll write it right here. I know that looks sloppy, but hey. Any questions? I know it's a lot. Listen, this is the only part. After this, after we finish the water and purification, it gets easier. So I know you're like, man, I don't want to come next week. It's too much. It gets easier. But this is what, people want to study Islam. This is part of studying Islam. Learning and understanding the kalam of the ulama. And here's another thing. Sometimes we have people, you might read a hadith. Like there was a brother I ran into about a month and a half ago. We were in the masjid, and he was praying sunnahs after Asr. And he said, brother, there's a hadith that says the Prophet ﷺ prays sunnah after Asr. I said, Akhi, this hadith is talking about, that was specifically for the Prophet ﷺ. So, well, see, the thing is, when we read hadith, it's always important to understand what the ulama say about this hadith. What the ulama actually say about this hadith. How they understood the hadith from the earlier generations all the way up until today. If you open up a book of hadith and you try to implement what you read right away, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Just like if you open up the Quran and you try to understand the Quran based on your understanding, this is how we have people that become extremists in a religion, because a lot of times they take the text of the Quran and the Sunnah and they understand it for themselves, how they want to understand a religion. Islam is not set up that way. It's set up, there are rules and regulations in place to help us understand. Okay? Any other questions, guys? All right, so we're going to finish with that. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll pick up next week. Next week, inshallah, we're going to cover pure water that is pure, and we're going to cover filthy water, and we're going to cover garments. How do you purify something that's filthy? We're going to cover all that, inshallah. Then after that, we'll go into vessels. Then after that, istinja. So it's going to get fun, inshallah. Then eventually we're going to get to salat and so on and so forth. Be patient. Sabrun jameel. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.